Okay. Call to order the February 25th, 2025 meeting of the North Andover Planning Board. Jean, could you call roll, please?
Sure. Kate Kelly,
Here.
Sean Kevelin,
Here.
Eitan Goberg,
Present.
Peter Boynton.
Aye. All right. Chris and John are both not able to attend tonight, so we will note that for any public hearings that we do that they not attended, but they'll watch the meetings at a later date. Okay, so let's start with new public hearing, 75 Coachman's Lane, Amanda and Thomas Lau? Am I getting that right?
I think it's Loff, I believe.
Loft, okay. All right, see, I appreciate that. Application for a watershed special permit, I can't say water. Watershed special permit under Article 4, Part 5, and Article 10, Section 195, 10.7 zoning bylaw to authorize construction of an in-ground pool and patio within the 325-foot non-discharge zone of the Watershed Protection District. The property is located in the Residential 1 zoning district. All right, if you want, Jean, why don't you give us an introduction?
Sure, so I put a locus up on the screen. You can see Great Pond Road is here. Coachman's Lane is off of Great Pond. This is the subject lot, and you can see a significant wetland across the street from the house. And so the residential lot was created prior to October 24 of 94. The project's proposed within the 325-foot non-discharge zone from the bordering vegetated wetland.
And can you tell us where's the lake in regard,
So
in
way off screen
reference?
over this way.
Just to the north.
So,
Peter, are you familiar with this area and if this how this watershed relates to the lake?
Yes.
Are you able to kind of tell us that now, or you want to?
No, let's listen. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So why don't then
So-
we'll turn to, go ahead, sorry, Jean.
So, the closest point to the proposed patio, adjacent to the pool, is approximately 230 feet from the bordering vegetated wetland. The proposed limit of work disturbance is greater than 100 feet from the wetland resource area. The stormwater peer review has been completed. The stormwater management for the proposed improvements includes a 12-inch wide, 18-inch deep infiltration trench along the perimeter of the patio that's approximately 111 feet long, allowing stormwater to infiltrate during storm events. In addition, the pool will be equipped with a non-backwash filtration system. Best management practices included in the operation and maintenance plan include drain-down specs for the pool, proper storage of chemicals, maintenance of the filtration system, maintenance of the trench, and maintenance schedules. Discharge of the pool into the town stormwater management is strictly forbidden, and the standard deed restriction for pesticides, chemicals, and non-organic fertilizers is included in the draft decision. The application's been reviewed by the health director, building commissioner, fire department, and conservation administrator. The conservation administrator requested that erosion control be actually put across the street to protect that wetland. However, that erosion control is in the right-of-way, so I've confirmed with John Borghese that he has no objection to providing erosion control on that side of the street. However, he just wants to condition that it gets removed once the project concludes so that it doesn't create ponding in the street.
Okay. Has that been added to the decision?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And so, as you said, there's been a draft decision prepared for your consideration.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicant now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. For the record, my name is Chris Sparagus from the Engineering and Survey Office of Williams and Sparagus over in Middleton. And we're here representing our clients at 75 Coachman's Lane. And as you heard, a quite detailed explanation of the proposal. We did a very detailed topographic survey of the property and located the wetland resources that are just off to the right there, which includes a bordering vegetative wetland. We show a 100-foot buffer zone extending from there as the no disturbance zone, and then all the way to the back of the property, you can see the 325 non-discharge zone. And the proposal involves creating some additional impervious surfaces.
Can I ask you to hold for a minute? Jean, can you, with your cursor, just touch on that 325? Okay, that's
The
what I
rear
thought.
property line.
And so that's the direction of the lake going that way?
Yep.
Yeah,
So
good.
everything's non-discharge from this 100-foot line to here.
That's correct.
And non-discharge is about stormwater runoff control.
So these lines are referring to the wetland, not the lake?
Correct.
Okay.
It's well beyond
Yes,
400 feet from
correct.
the lake, and
Yes.
so it's not subject to the
Okay,
lake.
thank you.
That's correct. For your benefit, the wetland that's located over to the right-hand side there wraps around and then goes underneath Great Pond Road, and then eventually it heads out to the reservoir. But it's quite far. But there is a stream that extends from the reservoir into that wetland system, and it heads out to the north and then
Is
up
that
to the
the
reservoir.
stream we can see right there?
That's correct.
So the stream this is oriented north at the top,
Correct.
so the stream is going northeast.
That's right. And then you'll see it
Got
hooks.
it, yes,
Yeah,
and there's a
it
very
hooks.
large wetland up there. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. As Gene mentioned, the lot was created back in 1965, well before the cutoff date of the October 94 date. It's a 1.5-story cape, and in the backyard, there's a lawn area, and then beyond the lawn area, where our survey extended to, you'll see topographic shots at the edge of where we located existing landscaping at the furthest improvements behind where we're proposing the pool. Beyond that limit of survey, it's all wooded back there. And so instead of going into that wooded area and cutting trees down, the lofts decided that it would be better to place this impervious area within an existing lawn area, so it wouldn't require the removal of shrubs or trees. You can see the pool is laid out there with a patio area around it, and then towards the house and on actually 3 sides of the patio is that stone-filled infiltration trench that Gene mentioned, 12 inches wide, 18 inches deep, and that total length is about 111 feet when you measure it on all 3 sides. The construction access is off of the paved driveway, which is over to the sort of upper right of the plan as you see it there, and on the right-hand side of the home as you're standing and looking at the house from the front of the street. And that's how we're going to get back to the backyard to do the work that we need to do. We've identified a temporary stockpile area, and then the erosion control is a darker line with dots along the right-hand side of the home. And then, as Gene mentioned, the Conservation Commission agent commented that as an extra level of protection, just in case we get any erosion associated with the construction access, that we add a little bit of mulch stock across the other side of the pavement, but within the right-of-way, just upstream of the wetland. This lot obviously is on town sewer, and it's been peer-reviewed. Our proposal has been peer-reviewed by Horsley Witten. They had a few comments that we addressed, including adding that additional erosion control, adding some construction matting along the construction access road to try to minimize the tearing up of the existing vegetation on the ground as the trucks are going back and forth. And then they asked us to add a checklist log in the operation and maintenance plan for the backwash filter system, so that there's a specific time log and date of when those systems are being checked. So that's all I have to present to you tonight, but I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll start down. Sean or Kate, any questions?
Just one quick question. Where are the mechanicals for the pool going to be located?
So I know that at the back of the pool, that very small rectangle is a proposed rock waterfall area. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it's not shown on the plan, and I do have the application that has the information about the reverse backwash filter. Let me just see if there was a diagram of the pool included. Looks like the details that are included in the application have to do with the filter itself and not the controls. I know it's going to be in very close proximity to the pool, but I do not see them called out there. If I were to guess, it's going to be in the vicinity of that rock waterfall, because that's going to be a little bit of a mechanical system there, but it's not shown.
Okay.
Kate, any questions?
What, on the, thank you, Chair. I forget what you called it, trough around the patio.
The stone-filled infiltration trench?
So what's on top of that so people can walk over it, right?
That's right. So typically the detail that we propose is crushed stone inside the trench, and then on top of it, we decorated, if you will, with a little bit of more decorative stone, like a river rock. I believe on the bottom right-hand corner of the plan, Gene, there's a detail. If you go down a little bit further. Right, so that's the inside of the trench. It's a washed stone, and then 2 inches of decorative river rock on the top of it. It's rather narrow, and so someone can easily step over. It's more of a landscape feature. You know, it kind of blends in with the other landscaping, but it serves a purpose.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. I don't have any questions or comments, Peter? Okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to make any comments? Have we received any public comment via email? I'm going to assume no, but I'd like to just ask. Okay. With that being said, can I get a motion to close the public hearing as to 75 Coachman's Lane?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We will now look at the draft decision.
So the first edit that I need to make is to change the approvers on this to strike Chris and John and to add Kate.
Okay, yep.
You're saving staples.
Yeah,
I
that's
like the
neat.
no staple. It's cool.
Gene, do we have the phosphorus standard comment in here?
Have a deed restriction?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where in the decision is that? I just haven't seen it.
Letter F on page 4,
6F.
number 6.
Thank you.
To be honest, I didn't have time to look it up, but this property permitted the patio out back, I believe in 2019, so we should already have a deed restriction, but as belt and suspender, I included it, but I'll confirm whether it's there.
Thanks.
All right. Everyone all set?
And you're familiar with that restriction?
Yes, it's something that we've seen on previous applications.
Okay. Do you happen to know if the homeowners are familiar with what that is?
So we haven't explained that one to them, but if you want to talk about it publicly so it's on the record, sure.
Well, it's to limit the type of fertilizer so that it doesn't adversely affect the drinking water supply, because properties that are close to the lake will eventually drain into the lake, and if it has that excess phosphorus, then it can lead to algae blooms in the lake.
Okay.
So the homeowners basically have to restrict the type of fertilizer they use.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yep.
It's just, and we like to talk about it too, because it's important that not only the homeowners know, but anyone working on the property, right? So they may know, now you know, and anywhere, I think you've done other work in towns in this area, so you know, but we want, when a gardener or new lawnscaper comes for the homeowner or developer or engineer to be able to say, hey, guys, just so you know, got to use the right type of fertilizers here. When the house is sold sometime down the line, that the more we say it, the more hopefully it gets done properly.
And this will
Okay.
be, it sounds like this is going to be a deed restriction that you're going to
Yep.
be looking to, so
Yep,
it'll be in a lot of people's faces.
good. All right, can we get, go ahead.
Just on that same subject,
Yes.
on page 3, at the top, there's a little Roman numeral 3. And that has the same language, which does seem consistent with the other language that we found. Except that sentence starts, the phrase, the section starts with no, and I don't know if no is supposed to be there. Is- I think I'm reading it
Yeah.
right. Okay.
You are. So pesticides, fungicides, chemicals, or other, or non-organic fertilizers are limited to those which are either organic or slow release nitrogen and phosphorus free.
And that is consistent. Yeah, that is
It's listed twice because one's a finding of fact
Right.
and one's the condition.
perfect.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the watershed special permit for 75 Coachman's Lane?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's approved.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, 430 Osgood Street, North Andover Public Schools. Application for limited site plan review under Article 8, Part 3, Site Plan Review, and Article 10, Administrative Section 195-10.7 of the North Andover zoning bylaw. Applicant proposes renovation of existing athletic facilities to include the installation of a multi-purpose synthetic turf field, reconstruction of existing tennis courts, drainage improvements, athletic lighting, and wetland restoration. The site is located within the R2 zoning district. Okay,
All right, so my staff report had indicated that we hadn't received the first stormwater peer review letter yet, but we did receive it on Friday. There's, I guess, quantity-wise, a lot of comments that need to be addressed, which should happen over the next few weeks. Department review comments have been received by Conservation, Health, and the Fire Department. The project is before the Conservation Commission with the notice of intent filing. Their hearing opened on February 12th. The Fire Department submitted comments that I've shared with the applicant regarding emergency access and would like confirmation that no new concession stands are being proposed, and as far as I'm aware, no new concession.
correct.
So I will let him know that.
Okay, and as a reminder, this is under our limited site plan review, our so-called Dover amendment. So we are, it is site plan review, not a special permit, and it is limited in our application to those Dover factors that we can consider as an educational use. All right, so with that being said, let's turn to it.
Okay. Thank you, Chair and board members. Just for the record, my name is Kyle Rowan. I'm the project manager for Gale Associates, and I have with me my colleague Ryan Thackeray, our senior designer. We are working on behalf of the North Andover Public Schools on the project at 430 Osgood Street. As was stated, this is a limited site plan review application per the Dover Amendment. We did issue the certification from the building commissioner that this does fall under that jurisdiction within our site plan review package. I'm going to move through here a little bit. So this is in zoning district residence R2. As was noted by the director, there is no proposed building structure within the limits of this project. Structures included will be limited to the athletic light towers as well as fencing, netting, and prefabricated dugouts. In terms of the actual application, some things I just want to touch on briefly. We do not anticipate impact to peak traffic flows. At the school property, we do not anticipate impacts to public services. For the most part, the scope of this project is maintaining the existing use of this facility and is more or less an upgrade and a redevelopment of the existing facilities. So some notable attachments that were included in our site plan review package include the geotechnical report, which I want to note for this board. At the moment, we only have the test pits for that geotechnical study in that report. So we are expecting a second, 2/3 of that report. We're told we're going to get it this Friday by our geotechnical consultant. That will include 18 more borings across the project site, which are specific to the design for the athletic light towers. Some items to touch on in the geotechnical report. The site. Well, I'm gonna jump ahead here, and why don't we dig into the plans first, and then I'll go back into the package if that sounds appropriate. Okay. We'll start there. So Ryan, if you want to get us to the existing condition sheets. So this project entails 4 locations across the high school parcel. That's spread across 4 sheets in this plan package. What you're looking at here, just to give everyone a feel for what the existing facilities are, is a natural grass baseball field with a clay infield. The outfield is typically used for rectangular sports, soccer, lacrosse, so on and so forth. Again, it is all natural grass. It is enclosed to the right by the access drive to the high school, to the north by the parking lot, to the west by an existing synthetic turf field, Walsh Stadium, and to the south and southeast by bordering vegetated wetlands. I want to go to the next sheet. The second area included in the project scope is the existing 6 battery tennis courts. These are bituminous asphalt tennis courts. It is our understanding they have been reconstructed once in their lifetime, and the courts themselves have been in existence within that footprint for over 30 years. As you can see, this court system, is surrounded by bordering vegetated wetland on all sides. There is also a small area of intermittent stream bank flags near an existing culvert and walkway. And again, we have bordering vegetated wetland to the southwest as well as 200-foot, or the riverfront, which you can't see is farther down to the lower left of the page. That 200-foot riverfront area does protrude over the access drive. Ryan, if you could point it out with your mouse there.
These are the old plans, so it's not quite shown on these plans yet. But
It's right about there. We have another sheet with it on it, which will be resubmitted to this board, but that's where the 200-foot riverfront buffer falls. And that's the tennis courts. Go on to the next sheet. The next existing area subject to proposed improvements is the Faris track. This is a standard synthetic surface track. I believe it is 6 lanes, 8 lanes. Okay. Standard full-size 8-lane track with a synthetic turf field inside. You see there to the bottom right, there are 2 shot put areas. Those are concrete pads with gravel, stone dust, throwing landing areas. And those 2 shot put areas do fall just off the 50-foot buffer of an existing bordering vegetated wetland to the east. Next sheet.
You're doing a plan like this with facilities such as shot put, and I know they're existing facilities, but are you taking into account whatever the safety guidelines are for players and spectators with things like shot puts?
Yes, absolutely. So again, these are the existing ones. We'll get to the proposed layout. We will be reconstructing these 2 shot put areas that you see as part of this project scope. And we do follow NFHS, MIAA regulations with respect to recommended safety distances.
Great, thanks.
Just a quick question. What's the composition of the synthetic turf?
The synthetic turf that we are proposing is, I don't think we have a cross-section we can pull up quite now, but long story short is you have a 2-inch pile height of synthetic fibers. Those are the grass-like plastic blades. Those are adhered to a backing. They're tied in basically to a backing, so kind of like the base of a carpet, if you think of it that way. Mm-hmm. Within those fibers, that's infilled with an 1.5 inches of SBR recycled rubber. And mixed in with that is clean sand, which is used as a ballast, basically to keep that system down on the stone base. So you have your turf pile height, you have your infill, you have your backing, and then below that backing is 8 inches of gravel, 8 inches of stone that itself is above a geotextile fabric layer, and below that is prepared subgrade.
And I guess just to follow on that question, I mean, is this the standard composition for turf fields? And
Yeah,
like,
this is pretty uniform across all turf fields. The only variation in turf fields really is the pile heights, which usually 2 inches is the norm, and the only reason you would go higher or lower than that is to perhaps match an existing facility if you're just replacing turf onto a existing perimeter curb layout. But other than that, this is the standard turf system. The other variable is the actual infill material. So there is recycled SBR rubber, which is what we're proposing for this project. There are other organic materials on the market, many of which have not been around nearly as long, but they are out there.
Got it. And do they have a defined extractable and leachable profile? Like, I'm guessing that these things are typically well studied in terms of turf. I'm just curious. Maybe Gene, like, is there? So for turf fields, there's always the question of extractables and leachables, because things can leach into the groundwater, right? I mean, when you're putting in a composite down. And I'm just curious, maybe on the peer review, or maybe just a question to ask, like, what's the composition of the turf, right? And get a little more granularity there.
Yeah, I'm not sure the stormwater peer review would have
Yeah.
expertise in that.
Well, there are lots of studies about
Yeah.
turf, all sorts of effects in terms of how it gets in, whether or not it gets into any of the ground or the water, effects on athletes based on the type of turf and things like that, for concussions versus other types of injuries. So there's a lot of different studies out there, as well as different costs and things like that. I guess maybe the kind of question we can maybe have someone come back and answer is, like, how is it decided on this particular type of turf versus organic versus a different type of versus a different type of infill? What were the factors considered, and why this one in particular was chosen? I think would be kind of a helpful
Yep.
discussion.
Yeah, I think
Helpful,
so,
just
yeah.
someone to kind of provide
Yeah.
that basic information,
Yeah, I
because there's a
just-
lot of factors that
I mean,
go into it.
Yeah, I mean, where my question's coming from is I just have a lot of questions around kind of how and why that composition was determined, right? I just
For the sake of this particular application.
of this particular application. yeah.
This is outside the watershed.
Okay. Got it.
So it's downstream
Got it.
of that. Now,
Yep.
that doesn't mean there wouldn't be any concerns, but that particular one I'm less concerned about because it's outside the
Got it.
watershed.
Okay.
Right, and I think there are two things. I think we do have to be mindful about our limited site plan review, though I do want to go, I mean, safety is obviously a factor that we need to consider. But I also, I mean, I guess a tangential question is, Gene, do you know has this project been funded yet?
The design of the project's been funded.
The design has been funded. My understanding is the release of I believe it has been approved at town meeting, but the actual release of the funding, or I'm sorry, the approval of funding is subject to a town meeting in May,
So
I believe it
if
is.
the approval of the funding is subject to town meeting, I do think it's important that we hear something about the choice of turf, because that is a topic that is going to come up. It came up at the last town meeting about a different project with turf versus grass, and I think it's at least, I want to be mindful of our jurisdiction, but at the same time, I don't think we should ignore that question because it's going to come up. So we might as well get at least some information about that now. We're not going to have a full, hearing about turf versus grass and things like that. But I think we should get at least a little bit more information about how that was chosen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the best way to go about it. I mean, just understanding the process and how these things are chosen, right? Yeah, that'd be great.
Can you just summarize for me, for all elements of this project, there's artificial turf where?
If we want to just jump ahead to the actual proposed improvements, we can do that, and that
Well,
might.
I mean, can you just,
Are you talking about, Peter?
just narratively tell me,
It's just, so in the area of the existing baseball field now, right there,
Yeah,
we are proposing, Ryan, if you want to just go to that sheet for layout materials. That right there is the extent of newly proposed synthetic turf on this project. So the other areas we were looking at, the tennis courts are going to be reconstruction of those existing tennis courts. Up by the track, that's just new athletic lights. And on Walsh Stadium, there are new athletic lights, which I'll go through in more detail. But in terms of synthetic turf, to answer your question, this area right here is the extent of it.
The ball field.
Yep.
And so, for example, the track or the track infield does not have will not have synthetic turf.
Not as part of this project, but it already does.
Already does, but not as part of the project.
Right,
Correct.
so- but I think that's important. The track
Yeah.
already does, and the football field already does as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
But this does not already have artificial
Correct.
turf.
Correct.
This is
So
in-
that's a new installation of
Right.
it. Do you know if the type proposed, the new artificial turf proposed here is the same type that was previously used in other locations at the high schools, such as the track?
So what I can say to that is the actual turf carpet itself, so the fibers and the backing, it's more or less the same. We don't know what manufacturer ultimately will go with because of public bidding laws, but it's more or less the same product. The difference is, of course, it's a new generation, right? This will be constructed in 2025 as opposed to the other fields, which I don't remember the dates off the top of my head, but I know Walsh Stadium is close to a decade old. I believe the track is.
They both got put in with a new high school back in 2005, and
Yeah.
then they both got replaced, I want to say 2016. So,
So
9 years ago.
about a decade old, both of the existing
Okay,
fields.
and what is the approximate acreage of new artificial turf being installed on these fields here?
I believe I actually have written here somewhere. It is 135 square feet, 135,000, sorry, square feet. What that is in acres,
that in acres?
about 3.
3?
Yep.
A little
Okay.
less than 3, right? Acres 50.
And the life of these is about, did you say it being replaced once
Yeah.
since 2005?
Usually it's been replaced once since 2004, since its original installation, both fields at the track and at Walsh Stadium. The lifespan of these nowadays is about 10 to 14 years. Most of the warranties that are provided with the manufacturers is 10 to 12 years.
So they're getting better. It used to be 8 to 10. It used to be 8 to 10 years, and now with the new technology, as I mentioned, they're increasing their lifespan.
But the old turf goes to well, you're not doing old turf here. It goes to landfill, presumably.
It goes to different places. I can't really, some of it
Okay.
does. They are starting to get into recycling, but to your point, we're not removing any old turf as part of this project scope.
Okay.
And one other point I just want to make on that is, like I said, the fiber and the backing, similar product, different generation, but the infill, the SBR rubber infill, that is the infill that was used on Walsh Stadium, the existing football field, as well as up at the track. So we are proposing the same system here as to what is already on site. Okay, so I can keep going through the proposed plans, I
Yep.
guess, if that makes sense. All right,
Yes,
so
please.
we're on the baseball, softball multipurpose field here. As you can see, we already talked about the general square footage. We are shrinking the footprint of the existing baseball field a little bit. If you look down on the bottom there, you can see the existing home plate. So we are pulling the field up as much as we can away from the bordering vegetated wetland to the south. There will be a perimeter bituminous concrete walkway. There will be limited temporary aluminum bleachers, portable bleachers, around each backstop. There are 2 bullpens, one for softball, one for baseball, as well as 2 batting tunnels, one for softball, one for baseball. And then last we have, remind me of the number, Ryan, not 10 athletic lights?
10.
We have 10 athletic light towers around the perimeter of the field. These vary anywhere from 70 to 90 feet in height. The height, for what it's worth, the reason for going so high is actually so they can direct the light more directly down onto the field and it reduces spill outside of the field limits.
Do we have a photometric plan somewhere in the plans?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
We don't need to go through it. I just wanted to make sure it was in there.
Yep.
Is this outside of any FAA concerns for the airport?
I can confirm that. I don't, yeah, we'll
I
double check.
ask because the neighboring hills do have aircraft warning lights, and they're not far away.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into it.
Thank you.
We just did a project this past summer where we added the FAA red flashing lights, so it's no small. It's a pretty easy task if it just needs to be added on.
Thanks. Can you let us know what the answer is on that?
Yep, yep, and we will add it to our list for sure. One other thing I want to point out on this plan, if you can point this out, Ryan, you'll see a dashed rectangle there, right around here. So this is an existing subsurface detention galley that collects stormwater from the parking lot up to the north. That stormwater runs down through a pipe below our field into that galley, and then to the east, all the way under Walsh Field, and eventually out into the river body. That was installed in 2001 with the original high school construction. We are not changing that system, and in fact, as part of this construction, we will be uncovering that detention galley during the demolition and earth removal phase, and we are going to require that the contractor inspect and clean, if necessary, that structure before we cover it back up.
And when you say river, are you referring to Kachikowick Brook?
Correct.
Okay.
I believe that's it for this plan. Any questions on this one before we jump on?
Any question? Nope, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I do have one. Sorry. So you
Yep.
said multi-purpose. So baseball, softball, multi-purpose. Any kind of specifics on that? What else it
So
would be used for?
the striping you can see there, that's football. So we have the space for football, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, all NFH level and meeting NFHS regulations,
Okay.
as well as baseball and softball. So we are packing a lot of use and a lot of sports into one area, and that I will say is the primary purpose of synthetic turf, is just that you're able to fit a lot in and subject it to a lot of use. Next sheet.
And does the lighting extend the time of day, or can they use it more than before, or was it's just replacing existing?
No, there is no lighting there now. There's lighting on Walsh Stadium to the west, but the existing baseball field does not have lighting, so this would be new.
And you expect it to be, or it's expected to be used in evening hours? is it?
Yes, we have not discussed the exact timing with the school district. I don't think they've developed that schedule quite yet, but that would be the intent, is just to be able to get a little bit further into the evening and the shoulder seasons.
And what sort of abutter notifications have been made or will be made?
So far for this site plan review process, as well as was noted, we went before the Conservation Commission as well, which required abutter notifications, which was pretty much the same package you see here.
So it has gone out.
Yep.
And did that package make note of new lighting?
Yes, it did say that in the summary. I'm almost certain. We can double check that, but
It would
I have
really
no
be
doubt.
helpful if you do, because there's a number of concerns here that we can anticipate a need for close awareness, and it's best that we do that earlier rather than later.
Understood.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Good on this sheet? All right, we're going to move to the tennis courts. So if you recall from the existing conditions, what exists there today is a 6-battery bituminous asphalt tennis court with perimeter fencing. Those courts have existed for over 30 years in that footprint. What we are proposing as part of this project is full-depth reclamation and reconstruction of those courts in kind, in that precise location, so we will not be expanding in any direction outside of them. We are actually reducing the impervious area slightly by chamfering the corners, as you see on that plan, as best we can. One other item of note on this plan is, if you recall, there was a walkway from the access drive through to the old tennis courts. That involved a culvert, which connected the two bordering vegetated wetlands. That culvert has since failed and will be removed as part of this project. And after that removal, we will restore that stretch of wetland to connect the two bordering vegetated wetlands together again with an open channel, as well as restoring the bank on either side and preventing pedestrian traffic through that area. So, as you can see on this plan, pedestrian traffic will be rerouted to an existing open grass space to the access drive from that corner of the courts.
Gene, I'm not not sure that I'm orienting myself correctly here, but is this where there's a Veterans Memorial?
No, that's on the back side of the high school, so
Okay.
on the track side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions on the courts here?
So, just so I understand, so you're going to reclaim the asphalt and replace with asphalt? Is that correct?
Yeah, so
Okay.
full depth reclamation is they basically go in and they mill up the existing pavement and existing base stone. That becomes the new base stone,
Got
and
it.
then we'll bring new asphalt on top of that.
Where is the parking plan for the tennis court now? Is there any change in location to the parking, or are they just expected to walk?
They are
So that-
expected to walk, yes.
So that's a
We
change.
can't really install any more parking along that access drive, given the wetland buffers.
And where there's change to the lighting of the tennis courts?
No lighting.
No lighting, okay. Great, good to know.
And it's only tennis, not pickleball. The kids don't play pickleball.
I apologize, there is pickleball striping on the courts, which is, so it'll be striped. The net itself will be temporary. They bring those nets out while they're playing pickleball. But we will have that on the far side, closer to the school.
Gene, are there also tennis courts on the access drive when you first go into the high school?
That's where they are.
That's these.
So before you make the bend, they're on the
Yeah.
right.
And
But
that's-
today, the walkway to them is on the long side,
Ah, right,
and it's
okay.
being redirected to the, before that bend in the road,
So the walkway is from the road,
from the road.
so you gotta walk out the road to walk into the courts.
There is a sidewalk on the opposite side of the road from the courts. We are proposing, at the very least, crosswalk striping to get to that sidewalk. And yes, in terms of parking, technically you're not allowed to park anywhere on that access drive. And as I mentioned, there's no real feasible way we could add parking to this project, given the
So-
resource area restrictions.
I would think within the constraints of our Dover review, safety, and that, your proposal for crosswalk striping at a minimum, that's something that we should pay attention to because
So,
of
yeah,
safety.
I just built it up, physical layout of the plan as it relates to convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site. So yes, that definitely squarely fits.
So when you say you're proposing that, will that be part of your plan?
What's shown on the sheet now is part of the plan, and we'll go forward, yep,
Crosswalk striping,
correct.
okay. Is there anything else that is advisable with respect to safety, given the reconfiguration of access, other than crosswalk striping?
So I will point out that the original access did not have a crosswalk, and I think of note here is that these courts will not be lit. This will only be utilized in daylight. And really, I think the point of safety is that crossing from the existing sidewalk on the west side of the access drive to our proposed walkway. So long story short is you always had to cross this drive to get to these courts. We are not able to change that, but we are adding in a crosswalk and getting the walkway out of the wetlands.
And so that's an improvement because you're adding, a safety improvement because you're adding a crosswalk.
In our opinion, yes.
Right, and when crosswalks like this are used, are there other safety mitigations that are sometimes considered other than striping the crosswalk?
We could raise it, or we could provide lighting, as in strobe lighting, flashlights, flash lighting.
Or-
But again, it'll be daytime use, so I think probably a raised crosswalk might be more useful.
Or you could put speed bumps, speed humps or something like that before or after. I mean, I'm not sure that any of those things are necessary, but that's another option.
I'm not-
Yeah.
I'm not trying to direct, I'm just trying to have a conversation about, it's great that you've proposed to add the crosswalk, you've improved the safety, thank you. Since you're the experts on this, when you see this type of layout, is there another type of safety mitigation that, a lot of times this would also be done? I can't speak to that, but maybe you can and you could just consider that.
Are there other, I'm trying to think about it, if there are other types of safety features already at the high school. I can't think of any.
I mean, I don't know, even if it's a, pedestrian crossing sign, or I take your point about the raised, If you have other recommendations, you're the experts, you know, we'd be interested.
Yeah,
in hearing.
signage is certainly something I think we will add on this
Yeah,
plan.
signage might be
regardless.
good just because it's new and different, so people might not expect it, though people, as you said, people are crossing there. I mean, I'd be interested to hear from the schools. I do find that generally, well, let's see, I'm not there during the day, so I guess I would be curious to hear from people there during the day what the traffic and the walkway. I do find people generally do, when I've been there, drive pretty safe within the high school, but I'm not usually there, not,
Yeah, I don't even
during the
recall.
day.
Is there even speed bumps?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, right?
Not that I can think
Yeah.
of. So, okay, we'll keep thinking and talking about that.
Okay. Anything else on this sheet?
Nope.
All right. So up at the existing track,
I'm sorry,
Yep.
I do. Are you replacing the fencing around the tennis courts?
yes, so when we go in and we fully reclaim all that
Okay.
asphalt,
And
we'll be,
how does the replacement fence height of the new fence compare to the height of the old fence?
I am quite certain we're matching it. Usually the fencing around tennis courts is 10 feet, and that's what we'll be proposing.
And when you replace tennis courts fences like this, is it normal practice to take a look on whether or not perimeter areas have suffered a lot of tennis ball literally build up like in the wetlands? Do you look at that and then say, hey, we've got a lot of evidence here of, you probably have a term for tennis ball overflow or whatever it is.
Detritus.
I mean, do you make those observations, or do you just replace the fence with what was there before?
Well, it's a mix of both, but I will say, with respect to this particular project, it was actually observed by the Conservation Commission when they went out for their initial site visits that the existing courts did have a fair number of tennis balls outside of the fence location. So we fully anticipate there will be a condition forthcoming in their ultimate permit that will require something to mitigate that. I'm not sure what it will be quite yet, but it is on the Conservation Commission's radar.
And the mitigation would typically not be to observe, hey, let's add another couple feet of fence height here. Instead, somebody troops out there to pick up the tennis balls. I mean, I'm not being sarcastic.
No,
I'm asking.
I totally understand. I think, in all honesty, with respect to that, this is kind of like when we're designing baseball fields and when we want to install backstops and safety nets. There's always the temptation to go higher and higher. The reality is, you see pop flies come off of a kid's bat. Those things go 100 feet sometimes. We
Right.
just can't stop it.
But here we're talking about tennis balls
Right.
and observing where they are.
Yeah.
Better coaching?
It
We
wouldn't help
could-
me.
We could look into potentially bringing it up to 12 feet, but if you go beyond that, that changes the structural design of the foundation of the footings.
I'm not directing it, I'm asking what your process is. I'm glad to hear that Conservation has it on their radar screen.
Yep.
I wonder if Conservation was aware that in terms of mitigation, since they have observed it, that the potential of another 2 feet might be available as a mitigation, maybe.
Yeah, we can run that by them and,
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Is there an option just to add netting as opposed to fence itself?
Not that I've seen. You mean above the existing or above the 12-foot or 10-foot fencing?
Which they do at backstop sometimes. They extend it with a net, and that way it doesn't structurally change the requirement for a building permit once you
Yeah.
go 8 feet.
We
as
can
far
look
as I'm
into
aware.
it.
I was gonna say, I mean, I wonder if similarly what like the golf course does, like I assume it's netting
Yep.
to keep
Yep.
golf balls out
The
of the
the
lake.
country club's tennis court is separated by netting to the golf course.
It's always straight out. Yeah. Scratch golf for there, Peter.
Yeah, right.
I'm a threat to trees. Okay, all right, why don't we move to the next?
Okay.
Appreciate your patience with these
Yeah.
questions.
No problem. That's why we're here. So we're moving up to Faris track. So this is the existing 8-lane track with a synthetic turf interior field. The work that is being proposed here is the installation of 4 new athletic light towers, which you can see at the 4 corners of the field right off the outside of the track. And the only other improvement in this area of the parcel is reconstruction of the gravel shot put area that we had shown before in the existing conditions plan. This layout is a little more fits the needs of the athletic directors typically at the high school level, and allows them a little more flexibility of use, and again does meet all the safety requirements of our governing body, which is the National Federation of High School Sports. One other item of note, I guess, on this is in terms of wetlands, up here we have that little bit of buffering vegetated wetland on the bottom right of that sheet. The shot put you see here is just outside of that 50-foot no disturb zone, no build zone. Pretty much in the same footprint as the existing shot put. Any questions on this sheet?
So these are new lights or replacement lights?
These are new lights.
Two.
There is not currently lighting at the track.
Okay, but they'll be just a certain height, or,
They are
Tip.
90 feet on the abutter side. They are 80 feet on the roadway side. And again, the purpose for this height is so the light can actually be very concentrated down on the field. It may seem counterintuitive, but the higher you go, the better control you have of glare and spillage outside of what you're actually trying to light. And we found with one of the suppliers we typically work with for these fixtures, they have improved significantly over the last 2 decades, and it's a pretty sharp cutoff.
Is there anything in particular in the track that is reflective? So I understand your point about the light going down. You can control where it goes. I assume that assumes that's hitting the ground and it's not kind of going anywhere. But if the stands or if the things with the shot puts are reflective, then that's not as helpful because then they're spilling. So I guess the question is are there things that are proposed that are particularly reflective?
I don't believe so
Okay.
at this facility, and
It's something that came up in another case in another situation, and it wasn't particularly addressed. So I'm only addressing it because it came up as a factor. It doesn't seem like there would be, but if that's something we could just check on, I think it's an important box. It's a box to check off.
Will there be a photometric plan for this as well?
we have that with
You
us,
do,
yes.
and did that take into account whoever's did the photometric, looking at the site for potential reflective surfaces? Or are they just saying, hey, this fixture 90 feet up, this is the pattern?
That's primarily what they do for these initial photometrics. They don't really take into consideration tree cover, for example, which in this case would mitigate even further than what's ultimately shown on those plans. But from the design perspective at the initial stages, what we're able to get from these manufacturers is a photometric just based on height and existing ground and where light would fall relative to that.
Is it possible to update that photometric plan with examining what's actually there with respect to reflective surfaces?
We can check with them.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll reach out.
Thank you.
I do think this would be one that if we get to the, if we get to the decision phase, that a compliance with the luminescence plan, the photometric plan, and follow-ups would be appropriate.
Do you think any aspect of this is worth a site visit or not?
I've been thinking about that. I haven't decided in my own mind yet. I was gonna wait and hear if there's public comments and things like that.
Yeah.
So it may, and also what the timing is, it may be. I was thinking about that. I hadn't crystallized
Great.
it for me.
Well, let's keep it in mind.
Yep,
Thank you.
okay.
Are the existing football lights also 80 to 90 feet?
There are no lights up
The
there now.
football field,
Football.
Oh, football lights, I'm sorry. At Walsh Stadium?
yeah.
I can't say for sure. We can confirm, but they're,
I believe they're 70.
So that'd just be helpful to give you perspective
Yeah,
if
that
you
would
go
be.
look at those lights.
Okay.
They're 70 and these are 90.
the only thing
Also,
I would,
It would also be helpful to us in the course of what are certain to be forthcoming questions, not just tonight. For us to be able to say, well, we asked about that, and the stadium is X feet and these are Y feet. So if you can check on that, that would be helpful.
okay. And one thing I just want to say with respect to looking at the lights, the existing lights at Walsh, as sort of an example, one word of caution there is those are very old light fixtures. Again, this technology has progressed
Right.
significantly in terms of glare control and spillage. So what we can also do is provide examples of more recent facilities within the area that use similar lighting fixtures to what we're proposing.
Great.
That will provide a much better example of what you can expect to see at this site.
Excellent.
That would be great. We did that previously, and that was
Very
a
helpful.
project, and it's helpful. Great.
Okay, I think that's also useful information we've found for abutters for projects like this, is
Yes.
notifying them of those facilities that they can take a look at. Any other questions on this sheet? Next one. And so at our last sort of area of the 4 areas that improvements are proposed on this project parcel, this is the most limited of those areas. What we are showing here is 2 new athletic light towers at the south side of Walsh Field. So this is the existing football stadium. If you want to just kind of cursor over those, that's light pole 1, light pole 2. There are 6 existing light poles, 1 on the west, 4 up by the existing bleachers, and 1 to the east. Those will remain as is. What we are proposing there is a replacement of the fixtures to more modern fixtures, again, to assist with glare and spillage. So we will be upgrading those 6 lights and installing 2 new light towers at the south.
All of the light towers will have new fixtures?
Correct.
Wow.
And they will all be 80 to 90 feet now?
We won't be changing the heights of those 6 that are existing. The 2 on the south side of Walsh here, I don't know which they are, but they're between 70 and 90 feet, which we can confirm.
Great.
The one thing I want to point out about these ones, and Conservation Commission is aware of this, the proposed light pole to the bottom left, that one does fall within the 200-foot riverfront area. So we did submit a waiver request for that, and we are also within the 50-foot buffer of the bordering vegetated wetland, but we are outside of the 25-foot buffer.
Okay.
We submitted an alternatives analysis to the commission on that note, or we will based on their comments received at the hearing, which more or less explains that in order to meet the lighting criteria of safe play on that field, there's really no other potential location for that light in that corner.
Okay.
Okay, would you all like me to touch on the proposed drainage as well?
Yeah, first, Gene, where do we stand with the peer, so the drainage is being peer reviewed, correct?
Yep.
Where do we stand with that?
We got the first letter on Friday, so they just received it Friday. And
Okay,
like I
so
said,
We got a letter from our peer reviewer, which has comments about things that should be added or changed, and you guys are going to address those items.
Yep, we already have our draft responses together. If you wanted us to summarize some of those today, we can, or if you would rather just wait
see
for
them,
those.
But why don't you just give us a brief summary of the drainage and what changes you may expect from the drainage?
Okay. So really, all that's going to apply to in terms of revised drainage, stormwater management on this site is the baseball field, for starters, the multipurpose field. So again, this is all one contiguous synthetic turf field. It is contained by a 15-inch concrete curb at all sides that acts as both a shelf for the turf back fiber to sit on, but also as a sort of containment system for the subsurface base stone, as well as a stormwater management system.
Just to back up, just in case there are people watching so they understand, you're replacing grass with turf, which is less impervious, meaning that the water, or more impervious, less pervious, that the water doesn't seep into grass like grass does. It kind of stays on the turf, and we need something to help move it along, as opposed to what the grass would kind of naturally do. Fair?
So synthetic turf and natural grass, for the most part, are similar in their rates of infiltration. What's different here is that we have our 8 inches of stone beneath the synthetic turf field, which acts as a void space to contain stormwater, and that is, again, encompassed on all sides by a concrete curb, which in heavier storms, allows stormwater to collect within this sort of reservoir, for lack of a better word, and gives it time to infiltrate into the compacted subgrade below. So more or less, we anticipate this infiltrates similar to the existing natural grass field, but in times of heavy rainfall, there is an outlet control system at the bottom right side of the field that will act as an overflow into the existing subsurface stormwater infrastructure adjacent to the access drive.
The concrete perimeter curb, it sticks up above grade level?
So it's at the same grade as the turf, and it's
Okay.
pretty much going to match the grade of all the grass around it.
And having a concrete perimeter is not a safety hazard for athletes?
No, this is every turf field you go to. You're going to see this. Even at an open, even when you go to a track and you have turf in the middle, you'll almost always have a concrete curb between the track and the field. Part of that includes a trench drain, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but that
It's
is
all
the standard
flush.
design. Yeah,
It's
and it's
what?
all.
It's all flush.
Flush.
It's all the same elevation.
And I think a very important point there is the concrete curb itself, with our field extents, is well outside of the recommended safety areas outside of the limits of the field.
Okay.
So you have the edge of your soccer field, and then you have 10 feet of open space, and then the actual
Okay.
perimeter of the field.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the drainage scheme for this system. The only other area would be the tennis courts,
I'm not showing these plans, but yeah.
which the existing courts, they sheet flow at about 1% from the southeast side to the northwest side. And so that, like I said, existing courts, they basically just sheet flow off into that grass area and make their way into the wetland. This plan that you're seeing here, the one that we submitted on January 22nd, does have that same grading scheme. So again, just sheet flow across the courts in that direction at 0.83%. I will note, as part of our the stormwater review comments that we received, as well as comments we received from the Conservation Commission at the February 12th hearing, we will be adding a stone infiltration trench along the northwest side of the tennis courts as a water quality measure before that water makes its way to the wetlands. So again, not shown here, but you will see that on the revised documents that we provide in our response to the peer review questions,
So-
comments.
As we're talking about stormwater, a couple years ago, we had something on the order of a 6-inch rainfall day. I don't know if you were around then, but it was memorable.
I don't know where I was.
I don't think we
What-
got hit down as far south as Boston and Rockland. I don't
When
think we
was
got-
this?
A couple years ago,
A couple years ago?
July or August? Yeah,
August 23?
Mm.
Yeah.
either July or August. Yeah.
So we've seen really bad anomalous rainfall. What design standard are you designing to for stormwater with these facilities?
So we're designing per the regulations of the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, which is a 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year rain event.
Okay.
Those exact rainfalls, Ryan, our designer here, will know better than I do.
The 100-year is 8 inches over 24 hours.
Okay. Thanks.
Is there anything in particular in this project? One of the Dover criteria is incorporation of sustainability that we have in our bylaw, incorporation of sustainability and resiliency principles. Is there anything kind of in particular you could point out in this that kind of goes to those things?
I would argue that reconstruction of the tennis courts in kind in their footprint, we are again pulverizing and reclaiming that system, so we will be basically reusing everything that's there now as part of the new base for that system.
Okay, great.
And where we can do things like that, we will.
Yep.
Well, and the lights are sustainable in the sense that that you're putting in.
They're LED fixtures, they're state-of-the-art, they're as new as they come.
And the replacements at the football field are,
Yes, and
Gonna
we
be
will
better
be
than the
replacing
ones.
older fixtures there, correct.
Very good. Okay. Anything else you think we need to go over tonight?
I don't believe so. I think if, like I said, we have draft responses to the peer review comments. They were all relatively straightforward, and as far as we can see, it's a matter of tweaking our stormwater model and providing additional information, so nothing significant there, but, you know, unless you want us to review those
No,
now, we'll
let's-
just submit those
I'd rather
formally.
get them on paper so that we can
Yep.
review them and some members of the public can better review them as well. Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna now go to any public comment. So if there is anyone that wishes to make any public comment or question, the way it works for our public hearings is that you would come up to the, and nobody has to, but you're more than welcome. You'd come up to the podium, you would tell us your name and where you live. If you have a comment, you can address it to the board. If you have a question, also please address it to the board, and then if it requires a response from us, we'll respond. If it's something for the applicant, then we'll direct them to try to make a response if they can. So if anybody has any public comment, you're welcome to come up now.
Good
Hello,
evening,
sir.
Chairman, Board. My name is Kevin McCoy. I live at 676 Osgood Street.
Okay.
If I could have the slide go back to the track, please. So my property is where the property line bisects turn 3 in the upper right-hand corner of the track. Yep, I'm right where the cursor is.
Okay.
That fence line is 50 to 75 yards away from the back of my house. You're proposing 4 90-foot light towers. I know how tall 90 feet is, because I have 65-foot pines in my backyard.
Okay.
And I can appreciate the preciseness of what we believe the projection of the light will flow from the street side. I didn't buy a property at the price point that I bought to have 90-foot light towers in my backyard and 2 lights that are going to be shining for a significant amount of time in the evening. So that's problematic. I have neighbors here that sit just above that property line and sit just below that. That's problem number 1. So I'd like to know hours of operation, how it is going to be policed. The other part that I have is not necessarily for this project, but in general for that track. Every track meet starts Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m. with a beautiful day blaring across the entire neighborhood. And if you live in that neighborhood, you know what it sounds like and you know how loud that is. We also, I find myself frequently evicting adults and children from defecating in my backyard because access to the labs or whatever porta potties there are, not really utilized in the way that I would expect them to be of a town of this stature. I also frequently pick up beer cans, bottles, and other refuse in my backyard. There is a fence that has been trampled over. I've written to the superintendent a number of times. I got a response once. Nothing's been done to it. We've been in the house since 2021, right? Since 2021. So I'm tired of it. I don't want to be the policeman, and I don't think you want me to be the policeman.
Can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
You said, so the fencing, you said there was a fence.
There is a fence.
There is a fence, but
It's been trampled over. There's overgrowth in the back. It's been down for before I bought the property.
okay. Is there proposal for fencing in this project?
Not at the moment.
There is a fence around the track.
Yep.
But
Around the
beyond-
track.
But what they do is they hop the fence. It's
Yeah.
a 5-foot fence. They
Yeah.
hop that. Then they just parade out in the back. And
How-
I'm talking children and adults.
The fence on your property, how long that's knocked over, how long is it?
I've been there for 3
No,
years.
but how long is the length of fence we're talking?
It runs from your property, Barbara, all the way down to, yeah, it really runs that entire line, the entire length of that line, that line that runs down here.
So it's hundreds of feet.
Hundreds of feet, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the length of the school, basically.
Is the whole fence down the whole length?
Portions of it in my backyard are. I don't know yours, Jay, how far it is
Okay.
from yours.
Can you ask the school department if replacing that fencing could be part of this plan? I mean,
We
I
will
think that is
inquire.
a potentially minimal, but very beneficial thing that could be done. So can you ask them if that's something that could be looked at?
Yep.
Where are the porta potties?
That was gonna be my next
On
question.
the other side. On the side, yeah, on that side.
Jesus.
Where are the closest actual bathrooms? Do we know?
In the high school.
In the high school.
Probably in the school.
Okay.
Do you want to see an aerial view of these abutters?
Yeah, that would be great.
Proximity?
That'd be great.
This would be one of them.
So I want to think about what, if anything, I'm not sure what authority we have about porta potties. It's certainly a valid point. I'm just not sure what our authority there is. I got to think about that.
Well, in the past, on other issues and other projects, we've written letters to our fellow boards or the town to say it has come to our attention. And that's at least an awareness and notification that could help.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can do more.
Yeah, good, good.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's my property in green,
Okay.
676.
So is someone here that's
Correct.
below you?
Yep.
Okay. Right there. Okay, you guys. And someone below that or above? Which one are you? Above? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay.
I think this is the fence line here.
Yeah, that's the
Got
fence
it.
line, yes.
So let's ask about the fencing. I think that's a very reasonable thing to ask about.
And when we ask about it, it sounds like it's asking about a fence that's derelict
Mm-hmm.
and therefore could fit the purpose of this project.
Yeah, I mean, if
derelict,
we're
it
making
needs to be
improvements,
fixed.
then it's also a safety issue.
Yeah.
I'd say
Yeah,
not only for.
exactly. Someone gets hurt on my property.
So, I mean, yeah,
Right.
it's a new nice fence. Also, it's like the broken window theory that a new nice fence makes it less likely for people to come and trespass and stuff like that. If it's broken,
Right.
people are like, nobody cares about this property. Why should I care about it? And are more likely to trespass. Okay, porta potties. Let's think about I think it would be good if we had additional ones. I don't know what we can do there. Lighting. So point is well taken. We do have and this is something we constantly deal with when we have field projects. As the gentleman said, lighting that we've had come about over the last 5-10 years is vastly improved from lighting before. There is a photometric plan, so basically what that says is if you use these type of lights, they can expect that there will be X percent lumens, how far it will go off.
And what this should show is essentially contour lines,
Can we pull up
the number of looms, and it will show
Oh, I'm
you-
very familiar with the
Okay.
language that
All
you're
right,
using.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
But to put this into context, I'm sitting on my third floor balcony, right? Your heads are the tops of the pine trees, and I'm looking at that light. Okay, so that light, the fact that it's shining down is fantastic for the athlete. It's crappy for the property owner. Has to look at that light.
Right, but as I understand it, the higher you go, the more you can aim it down versus if it's
I'm
up.
still looking at the light. I'm still gonna see the light.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how far it shows down, when I'm looking at it, I'm still gonna see the light.
Is there a way to represent in a photometric plan, perhaps not usually done, but technically feasible, this type of angle from an abutter's third floor, looking directly across at the light fixture? That's different because usually the photometric plan is the contours as it hits the ground. Now, you can infer that, okay, if this is what it is here, it's a straight function up to the fixture, but I don't know if that's actually true. I don't know if there's stray light that is not striking the ground, but is going out. Are you able to, do you know, or are you able to inquire if that type of photometric analysis is possible?
Again, we do have a manufacturer that we work with most frequently. As you can imagine, it's a pretty small industry that specializes in athletic lighting. the one that we do typically work with, I am aware of them having done that in the past on other projects. I'm not sure if that was pre-development or post-development, where they actually go out to measure afterwards to
Right,
confirm.
wow.
But that's, of course, a different story. So we can check with them what's
Thank you.
feasible, what's in their wheelhouse.
And just to be clear, the exercise would be, what is the photometric analysis from an immediate abutter at a third floor level looking directly at the light fixture? That's what we're interested in.
I'm interested in that, and I'm also interested when I'm in my backyard, looking at this angle, that light that's going to shine is going to cover everything that is that brick color. I don't think you're going to be able to shut the light off right at the edge of the brick color. I think there's going to be spill,
Well-
and that spill will end up in my property.
That,
Well, but you
that
did,
part of the plan will show us that. We'll have numbers.
so, a couple of things. I mean, you do have vegetation there, right? You said that there's the 65-foot trees.
Mhm.
Okay. So, I guess the other question I have is if the light fixtures were 70 feet, like the ones at Wall Stadium, as I understand it, that would be lower. Now you have some blocking from the trees, but more spillage because of the lack of height.
Correct. When they are lower, my understanding is they cannot focus the light as precisely as
So
when they
there's
are
a-
high.
There's a trade-off.
Indeed.
Okay.
However, in a situation like this, we may need to explore that.
So I was gonna ask is, could we get a photometric plan of 70-foot lights just to see what the comparison is? Right?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
to rule it out.
if it's a difference of just a few lumens, then maybe that's important. But if the spillage is now much more significant, then that's a hurdle.
And do we need it 70 foot for all the lights or just the lights adjacent to the abutters?
That I don't know. I mean, I think we just do it overall
Okay.
for now, and
All
then
right.
we could,
Well,
maybe this
here-
will require a site plan.
Here's why I'm asking. If we're able to have the desired effect by lowering the height of the lights adjacent to the abutters, as opposed to if we lower all the lights, then we have spillage everywhere, it could hurt the overall objective. And I don't know what the answer to that is.
I think we'll just kind of have to
Yeah, okay.
kind of piece it together. Okay,
From
so,
a- From a safety perspective, you might want to look at the lights that you're proposing that are at my property line, pointing down to the street. Again, I can appreciate technology, and I understand how lighting works.
which street?
Right down on Turnpike Street, so the lights that are going to be on the top,
By your property.
by my property, that are sitting behind my property line, as those are pointed down, I'm going to assume that you want to cover everything in the brick color. You're not going to be able to shut those lights off before they get to the street. I appreciate technology, and I understand this technology very well. You're not going to get that clean and crisp of a break. From a safety perspective, for traffic that's up and down that street, I would urge you to consider the safety protocol for pedestrians and automotive traffic as well.
Okay, I mean, but that's pretty well lit already. I mean,
Understood, but still, you're introducing another variable. I've heard safety 11 times in this committee. It's another element of safety that should be considered.
okay.
You mean safety as the lights impacting traffic on
As
125?
lights impacting a driver.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood
Yes,
what you were saying.
correct.
Good point.
Good.
If I can add some information there. So this track will not be lit. I think that's an important distinction to make. The lighting proposed is for the synthetic turf field inside the track alone.
Yes, that's helpful.
The plan that we have up right now shows you the perceived or the expected light spillage at 150 feet from the fixtures.
Where are the fixtures, if you could point those out?
So, right there, and there and there.
Okay, so there are 4 lights,
4 lights,
and they're aimed to solely illuminate the grass.
correct.
Or the green area.
The green rectangle in the center there.
Okay, so that is helpful information, for sure.
That is the intended cutoff, and you can see the exterior That line has very,
I cannot see the lines you're referring to.
these plans are a little tough.
Peter, if you, sorry, if you turn around, yeah. Oh, there's those are the lumens.
So that line is exactly 150 feet away from the center of the proposed light towers. And those are the anticipated lumens, light volume at that distance, again, not accounting for vegetation, but purely for distance.
But that's lumens at ground level?
What does the note say on it?
The foot candles
Foot
3
candles
feet
are-
above the grade of the field.
And so, but in this light, S9 and S10, those are facing towards the green
Correct.
triangle, right?
Correct.
And the ones on the opposite side are the ones facing towards, in the direction of any abutters, right?
Correct.
Well, that's not what I heard. I heard
That's-
all the lights are straight down.
They are pointing straight down.
Yeah, but, right,
But they're
the-
angled towards the
light
field.
pole- the light
Sorry?
fixture.
They're pointing down from the 80 and 90 foot heights, but they're angled
They
towards
are
the
angled,
field.
okay.
Right, right.
Like, that's the reach.
I'm just saying that this is the back of the light pole, this is the front, that's the back, that's the front.
Yep.
Facing this way.
Yeah.
And these ones will be facing that. Okay. Can we see the lumens on the other side?
What is the equivalent of moonlight? Isn't it .04?
That sounds right.
Something like that for reference, kind of a standard parking lot lighting on the low end would be 2.0, on the high end would be 5. So we're well below what a dim parking lot would register as.
Well, that may be fine on this side, but not the other side.
And there's no issues with highway access permits or MEPA or anything like that, right?
Nope.
Okay.
So what would the lumens be on this lane? Well, why do you have cars driving down the middle of the road? Oh, so this is the right hand, okay. These are the two lanes?
Correct.
Yep.
I'm curious, you've got the lumens on the far edge of the road, which is fine, you have to have them somewhere. But how much of a gradient do we have for this lane?
The reason the line is on the other side of the road there is because that line is exactly 150 feet away from the fixtures.
Yes.
So that
So
is
that's helpful.
right.
That we know.
Yep.
However, when we consider a safety issue, when I've seen these diagrams before, I could swear they have contours.
They have, basically what you'll see is a whole bunch of numbers across, right? These numbers that you're seeing, they'll be spread
Well, it's
throughout.
like a topographic map. And so
Right.
we
There's
can
different types.
We can see what the gradient is as you get closer, whereas this is just, it's kind of one-dimensional. Can we get the version where we can see those gradients and contours
We can. We have something similar to that.
on both sides?
Yep. Yeah, it'll be for the full lighting
Okay.
footprint of the
Thank you.
proposed fixtures.
Okay.
And then also to please inquire about the third floor analysis.
Sir, is there anything else you wanted to add tonight? So we're not making any decisions tonight. Hours of operation.
Hours of
Do
operation.
you have hours of operation currently?
We do not yet.
Okay, let's find that out. So that is usually something we put into a decision like this. Either that we dictate hours of operation, or that there's a group that will decide or work on that or have input on that. But yeah, there would be hours of operation or operations manual, things like that. And there's always like we make sure that there's a contact person, so that if there is someone that you actually have someone that you can actually call and contact and get answers. Hey, it's 11 o'clock and nobody shut off the lights. Can someone kind of go down there?
Hey, Tom, can we also keep in mind the notion of a letter so that, I think it's going to in part be driven by the answer on the fencing, but even if we have a good answer on the fencing, it strikes me that there are people in town that ought to be aware. If we have people using a high school athletic field that are defecating in the back of butters' yards, that's a problem. It's a problem with the health department and other authorities, and if we're the ones who are aware, we've done it before, if we could just keep that in mind.
But you have no trespassing signs on your property, right?
Why would I? Why do I need a no trespassing sign?
Because people are trespassing onto your property.
So I have to put a no trespassing sign to have someone cross over a fence to walk into my property?
You don't have
That's
to.
absurd.
Well, to meet the legal definition of trespass, you do, but
So defecating, catching someone defecating in my yard, kids drinking in my yard, that does not constitute trespass?
so, not here to give you legal advice on that, but there are certain requirements of notice that are required for trespass. And whether a dilapidated fence counts or not. This is not on you. We're not saying it's on you, but, and again, we're not necessarily here to solve that particular problem. That's not kind of our jurisdiction, but we will see what we can do at least to try to help with the issue. The lighting and the arrangement is really what we're here to, what our focus has to be on.
The defecation issue has been announced over the loudspeaker at track events. That there were complaints filed by the neighbors and to please stop using the bathroom in people's backyards.
So it sounds, that isn't unbelievable, but an awful situation. I'm just not sure
Yeah.
how we necessarily address that with this particular project, other than amplify that it's been said and done. I mean,
There's a few things we're gonna try. We're gonna work on the fence. We don't have an answer, we're gonna get an answer. And when we have that answer, we're gonna hopefully consider, perhaps other possibilities such as notifying the authorities.
And if you can give me a name, I have no problem
Yeah.
doing it all by
Well,
myself.
But let us gather the answers and go from there and
still have time
see
for
what we
track
can do.
season.
Well, I think it would be helpful to have someone from the school department here at the next meeting
Yeah.
as well. They're the applicant, and they should be.
Yes, the owner happens to be out this
idea.
week. They would otherwise be attending. But yeah, we can expect them at future hearings.
Okay.
And who would that be from the school department?
Our direct contact is actually with the town of North Andover. It's Lori Burzloff. And with the school department, we're working with Greg Landry.
So Greg would probably be the best person.
What's his position?
I don't know the exact title.
You know what his position
I
is?
don't know this title.
Okay.
Personnel, human resources, so it wouldn't be the, Barbara Wynn, 696 Osgood Street.
Right.
It wouldn't be the athletic director?
No.
We
HR
have
director.
contact with him as well, for what it's worth. So we'll bring
Yeah.
this
Ask
issue
them.
up
I
to
think
them.
the athletic director, Mr. Landy is great, very experienced, but HR is probably not what we need, because we need
I think
some.
we need the facilities director.
Yeah, someone that's operating the facility.
Or in my day in the high school, it would be the vice principal, who I got to know pretty well.
Oh, that's a
Thank you for
story
your
for
time.
another day. Okay.
Here.
Yeah, come on.
I have one
Sure, come on.
Jennifer McCoy, 676 Osgood Street. So just the last point on the hours of operation, I know we're gonna raise that. I think one of my concerns now is that there's no lighting currently, so that limits the amount of activities that can go on. I understand there's noise ordinance, but it goes very late in the evening. So I know there's a little rumors and speculation, but we've heard about maybe the marching band will practice here later in the evening. And that's a very different situation than where they currently practice. So you can see the back of our homes there. So a marching band practicing directly in your backyard is not something that is very exciting to, I guess I'll speak for myself, but probably my neighbors as well. It's just a concern. So I appreciate school activities. I hope none of this comes across as us, complaining, but I think we're just airing our concerns and really want to understand the change in impact to what's going on directly in our neighborhood, but directly in our backyard. So I ran track for what it's worth. I completely understand this. I support athletic activities, but we just really want to understand what all of these changes would possibly mean and just feel comfortable in understanding that.
Okay, and yes, and what we're trying to do is, within the scope of our jurisdiction and what we're allowed to do under site plan review, so we have the authority to figure out where things are located and things like that, rather than say necessarily yes or no to a project. But your concern is, someone running laps at 8 o'clock is different
Right.
than a marching band at 8 o'clock.
And that
so.
happens now, and it's wonderful. There's a lot of people from the community that are there, and I actually enjoy some of the track meets that happen
Yep.
during the afternoon now, but that settles down around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon versus going until the noise ordinance that ends at 10:30 at night. So our bedrooms are in the back of our home, so activities that are lit up with noise and fans and potentially marching bands is just something that's gonna change or impact our quality of life.
Okay, understood. That's a fair point. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other public comments? Come on up. Just also, we're not, I mean, this is helpful to have it now so that we can ask questions and have information brought back to us, but we are not making any decisions tonight.
Jason Bulow, 650 Osgood Street. These are my fine neighbors that you
Okay.
already pointed out on the map. So the green dot at the very top of that illumination study would be kind of where our property is. Kind of
Okay.
the peak illumination point on that map. So first question that I'm sure is documented somewhere, I just couldn't find it, is around the need, right? So the need for illuminating these fields in particular. There must be a study that's been done about how we're using our fields, you know, how they're being overused, et cetera. Because even on the Walsh diagram that the gentleman showed, you could see that more field space is being illuminated by those, I think, 6 extra light posts, and thinking, you know, there's tons of capacity down there. There's tons of capacity being installed at the baseball field. So some information that says this field is important to illuminate would be, I think, helpful for the abutters.
Okay.
From the starting
For-
point.
I can tell you from what I've heard anecdotally is that there are battles and for field space from every kid's sport throughout the town, and it's hard to find, especially baseball, but also soccer fields, lacrosse fields, all of those things. And the more you can spread them out, the more you can have time for people to play, also with synthetic. So I don't know if there have been official studies, but that's what I've been told on each occasion where we've had a field project. And I know from my kids' sports, you know, sometimes you're going at 5:30, sometimes you're going at 8:30, sometimes you're going at 9:30, sometimes you're going out of town. So it does seem like there is a need, but we can try to kind of drill down on that a little bit.
Yeah, clarifying that'd be helpful. I've been on the
Sure.
board of the soccer program for years, and we would rest fields. So
Right.
kind of the need to rest fields, do we need to do that? Are there other options, et
Well, the
cetera?
more synthetic fields we get, the less you need to rest them, right? So that is.
So that was kind of question number one, if we could see something there. You know, we talked a little bit about mitigations, but, you know, I'd like to kind of throw open for discussion, maybe some study, other scenarios too. Like I see 4 light poles. Have we looked at 6 or 8? Are there options to reduce the spillage if we do so? If there's
Well,
70
this one's
foot-
4, right?
Yeah, this one's 4, 90 and 80 feet tall. Thinking, well, you know, again, I'm not the expert, but if you did have 70-foot towers, is it better to have 6 of them or
I see
8
what
of
you're saying.
them or something? Just other options for us to be thinking about and helping consider.
Reduce the spillage
Yeah,
to the maximum extent.
sure. Yeah, if it means 2 more poles, great. You know, maybe everybody's happy with 2 more poles and it costs $50,000 more, something like that. So just thinking about that. What are the scenarios we've looked at? What are the mitigations that we've looked at? We've talked about lowering the heights of some of the poles, but are there other, I'm not sure what they'd be called, but like blinders you can put on poles that address some of the issues that have been discussed here tonight? So, you know, there's probably 70 of those mitigation factors that you can put in place. Which ones have been looked at, and which ones, you know, would work in a situation like we're looking at here, okay? And then, you know, we talked a lot about operating time frame, right? And I think I've heard, you know, 9 p.m. being when the lights would shut off. But I was thinking, okay, that
Where did you hear that?
from the AD. Just a
Okay,
conversation.
just because we haven't
Yeah,
heard anything
sure.
about it tonight, so I
Yeah.
don't think it's been, so we don't have any, you could throw it, it's just not on the record as
Yeah,
to what it is, so
that's okay.
I didn't know that.
That's actually not even the
Yeah.
question. The question is really about kind of the time of year as well, right? So, you know, a lot of us have deciduous trees, right? You can kind of see in that layout, and then there are none right now, right? So, you know, from my deck, I don't have a 3rd floor they look out at, but from my deck, it's just on the, you know, I can not see any of these fields in the summertime, if you came over to my house today and we sat on the deck, you can see the street, right? So kind of the consideration that time of day is important, but also which months are we talking about? I think it's gonna
Well,
be-
I mean, we can ask, I mean, some of it is obviously self-selective, right? You know, winter here is generally the time for indoor sports. There are very few that play outdoors. It doesn't mean that people wouldn't use it if there are lights, but I think, and we can definitely ask, but the likelihood of people using field at 8 o'clock at night on a 15-degree day is
Yeah.
probably pretty low, but we can certainly ask.
Sure, but month 11 and month 2 and 3, it's quite possible, right? So, you know, kids are playing on turf fields in January and February in a lot of locations across our state. So I don't think it's unreasonable to kind of think at least about those bookend months that we think we're going to use it. Let's think about the bookends as well. And then, you know, there's a pathway. Gene, are you running this one?
I'm running.
Can you zoom in on the street? Oops. Yeah. Something that's come up in conversation before. Maybe it's addressed in some way, or maybe it can be addressed by some of these scenarios that I'm dreaming about. But you see that pathway, like S12, S11? There's a path that goes right up the side. Yeah. So this is a pathway that there's a lot of kids that use that in the wintertime. And, you know, it's dark today. Today it's dark, right? So is there part of this plan where we can think about the safety of those students or other community members using that same surface that's highlighted right now? You know, right now I don't think we're talking about that, but it seems like if we're going to dig up the ground, why not? Why not try to put a low, like a low light on one of those poles so you're getting some safety kind of blasting towards, some light, safety light blasting towards the firehouse or blasting down towards the high school if it's possible.
So I think, I mean, it's a very interesting idea. I think those would actually probably be low bollard lights that would go along there.
Maybe
that
they're
would
on the
be-
fence. I mean, I don't know.
You'd probably put low, and usually with walking past like this, you put low lights that just kind of illuminate that area. But might be outside. I don't even know whose jurisdiction that is. Is that still school property?
Good idea.
But it's a good idea.
It's a great
I
idea.
don't, yeah.
I think one other comment might be, you know, it's dark right now, right? So we don't know what this is going to look like. Are there some samples that we could see
Yep.
that are nearby? Like, is
So
Andover lit this way? Are there some ways you guys can kind of show the community what that's actually going to look like, so that, you know, maybe it'll make us, you know, we don't really understand what 0.16 foot candles is, right? It's not part of the metrics that I learned growing
So
up.
we're gonna,
So-
earlier in the meeting, we did talk about it, and we're gonna get some examples of similar locations that have similar type of lights to see what those look like.
Okay, so we'll
So,
see
yes.
like what those fields.
Yeah,
look
so like, in the past, we've gotten ones, that, okay, this is Merrimack, you can go and take a look at it, so like, this is such and such, and we've actually gone and looked at those, but we'll get, I assume, that's what you guys said earlier, told which ones, and we might be able to get pictures of those.
Okay,
Well,
they'd be representative of our situation.
I think, I have a vague memory that we actually went out and looked
We did.
at lights when they were on.
We did, we did it at Merrimack and at Greater
Greater
Lawrence.
Lawrence.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I don't know if those
And,
are. some-
and when we do that, you know, you're invited to come with us, and we've got people explaining what we're seeing.
And it very well may be that we do now hearing your comments, that we do a site visit here so that we can in person see what we're talking about. But I think I'd like a little more clarity and answers first about what might be feasible before we do that. Can I ask you, what is, okay, what is an expected time frame of this? Do we know that?
In terms of construction,
Right.
construction this summer summer and fall would be the goal.
If approved, if funding gets approved.
Funding and permitting approval.
Okay.
I will say these comments have heightened my interest in the possibility of a site visit.
Yes, I
I would
agree.
like to see that derelict fence.
Yep, I agree.
Yep.
But I want to hear more about what's.
Yeah, so do I, yep.
So, yep.
So the timing question, all 4 projects proceed simultaneously?
Yes, it will all be bid as a single contract. And the intent would be, once the funding is approved in May, that funding actually becomes available for use July 1st, after which construction can begin on or around that date.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the football field one is that's a pretty quick and easy.
The light poles themselves up at the track and the light poles down at Walsh are really relatively quick projects, and the bulk of it will be the baseball multi-purpose field.
Okay. Okay, so I think, thank you all for coming, definitely highlighted this area. Again, you know, we're considering, part of what we consider is lighting and safety, also the impacts positive that these kind of projects have on our town and the schools and things like that. Those are all things that will be kind of considered. So to the extent that we can do things to assist with the layout that will help you folks, we'll try to get those incorporated. Okay.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes,
When
sir.
we started, the chairman gave a brief description of what's called the Dover Amendment.
Yeah,
Did that make any sense?
no idea what
Well,
that was.
let,
Thank you.
let me just take another try here, is that normally, when a project like this comes in, we're looking at everything. But when it's a school or a religious institution or certain categories, there's a law that says, no, you can't do that. This project is going to happen no matter what you say. And then there's an example like this with the Dover Amendment for these projects that say, it's sort of a compromise, says, okay, you can look at these few things, but that's it. So that's why we normally preface by saying, hey, we're under the Dover Amendment here, we're limited. So you may have noticed there's some construction at Merrimack College. And sometimes people say, hey, why did you let them do that? Dover Amendment. We had some say, but we couldn't say no. So this actually has some similarities with that. So it's not to say, hey, not our job. I mean, we've talked about a number of steps we can do. A number of those steps are actually a little more than we normally are able to do. But I think we've got a pretty good track record of, you know, pushing as hard as we can to try to help.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Peter, just a bit like, if we're gonna go potentially do a site visit, would it be worth floating balloons,
I was wondering about that.
right?
Except one of the comments was they know what 90 feet is because they have 65-foot high pines, but I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah, because there's only effectively four balloons you need to float, right? So it's.
But we also already have 70-foot light poles on site, not far away.
True.
So let's think about it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, we can all kind of go down there on our own and then see if we think that's going to be necessary. I don't want to do that quite yet. I want it to be a little bit warmer, and I want a little information. But sometime in March, I think will be appropriate.
Yeah.
Maybe setting it after the next meeting. Okay. Speaking of next meetings, so we're scheduled for next Tuesday.
Yes.
Is that too soon?
I'll defer to you guys. It seems like it'll be too quick. I know you continued with
It's probably too
conservation.
quick. In terms of responses to the peer review comments, we more or less, like I said, we have those together and could submit those as early as Friday, but one major missing piece of that submission would be the boring portion of the geotech report, which is a little bit out of our hands. That's up to our geotechnical consultant, who said they're getting it to us Friday. Could be next week.
I think I'd rather go do 3 weeks from now. That way we can get, we task you with a
submit
bunch of
everything.
questions.
Yep.
I'd rather come back and have as many of those answers as we can, along with the stormwater. That way, these folks, I mean, it's fun for us-ish to be here till 9 o'clock, but not necessary for everybody. So I'd say let's come back in 3 weeks and do that. So let's continue this until March 18th. And come back with any of those. If any of you folks think of anything else that you would like addressed, send an email to Jean, and then we can even bring it up and forward it to them and say, hey, can you also talk about this? So that we're not asking them at that meeting and then coming back and getting it. If we can get more answers, or questions asked in the interim, we're happy to do that. Okay, any other public comment come in online?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for the very well put together application and answers to questions. You guys had a lot of answers, which we appreciate. Thank you to everyone who came in and made comments. You are certainly helping make it a better project. So we will continue until March 18th.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, continued public hearings, annual town meeting zoning bylaw amendment articles. Are there anything new to any of these, Jean?
Just the ADU bylaw. There's some red line edits in response to Margaret Hurley's
Thank you.
feedback on
Okay.
the draft. And essentially, I will say, for the most part, the standard that's going to be reviewed is, would you do that for a single-family home? I mean, that's really their baseline decision. And where we had, I think it was only 3 things called out that could trigger a waiver. Aton and I spoke after we received Margaret's comments, and we made some red line edits that changed things to be a preference as opposed to a waiver provision. So initially, we did that for the 2 that were subject to no new curb cuts and cannot be located in the front yard for a new building. Once we changed those 2, it became evident that the only other condition that would be eligible for a waiver was the stairs to a second story. And so we again changed that to a preference that any new exterior stairs serving a second story ADU are not visible from the public way. So it's not a shall anymore, it's are not visible from the public way.
So basically, the comments we got back, if you could go down to the waiver provisions we had before, Jean. So basically, some of the comments we got back from the Attorney General's office, and this was from Margaret Hurley, who's basically in charge of the municipal division there, was, would you do this for, this could be problematic, would you do it for a single family? This could be problematic, the curb cuts and the,
New structure in the
and
front yard.
the front yard, would you do that for a single family? If not, that could be problematic in the law.
And the front yard piece was if they comply with the dimensional setback requirement,
Right. And
would you stop somebody from putting a new structure in their front yard?
Right,
And
yeah.
we wouldn't.
so where we had it as a waiver, and where it has to go through site plan review anyway, because it's detached, Gene and I thought it better just to make it preferential. You still have to come in for site plan review, and if it's really something that is going to be impactful, then it should be a problem for your site plan review. If it's not, then we shouldn't be denying it. So it should work out the same, but the AG did caution us that those things as being either waivable or as not allowed were
And I'll say,
problematic.
I reviewed these red lines with town council. She subsequently had a phone call with Margaret Hurley to talk about them, and, I mean, in general, the feedback was preferences aren't typically in zoning bylaws. She's seen it more recently. People are starting to tend to put preference language in. So she didn't find it to be a problem, but again, she just kind of cautioned preference. You then have to execute on, like, each applicant. Somebody might say, no,
Right.
it's a preference,
right.
I'm not doing it. And others may really try to accommodate. And
Yeah.
I just think that that's sort of the world we live in with these new kind of mandated zonings, is that while there are things that the state law says we can't say no to, I agree, that's not what was normally done. You don't usually put in, these are the rules, follow them or not follow them. But where these aren't our rules, I think we are well entitled, and I think it makes sense to put in our preferences. And I think someone who's going for limited site plan review can say, hey, I went along with all your preferences. I think you probably have an easier time of getting through site plan review quicker and easier than someone who's saying, no, I'm not going to do all the things you preference. Well, then we have to consider, why aren't you doing that? Is there a good reason? And if there's not, then, is that going to really affect your neighbors? And that can really affect your site plan. So I think that's kind of the compromise that we thought about how to lay it out. It's up for debate, comments. It's just what we're trying to do our best. I don't know. Anyone have thoughts on that, or issues with that, or questions? Other than we don't like it, that we have to do it.
I mean, I get why we're doing it. It is an awkward situation. A, B, C, D on the bottom of page 6, the D has it is recommended. Did you talk about that? Why? So we have a preferred and then we have a recommended. Is there a difference between a preference and a recommendation?
That's a good point. I think it's because we had the recommended in there before.
So should we
I think
change it to preferred?
I think
I don't know if it's elsewhere. That just jumped out at me.
I think that's a good thing to be. I think they are meant to be interchangeable in this, but yes, let's make it. Let's consolidate to one thing.
Gene, just one comment on page 7 on section C. Could you add the electrical utility and telecom connection?
Page 7, which?
It is
C,
preferred.
yep.
Yep.
What did you want to change?
It just add after utility and telecom connection. Just thinking like fiber cables and things like that, which is within the same vein of electrical wires.
And again, we made it as a preference.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty clear that we couldn't require anything.
So I guess, I don't know, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so this is just a Luddite trying to understand the difference between preference and a waiver. But, like, is there's, like, I feel like there's, like ADU shall not be located in the front yard. Like, I feel like that's, like, why couldn't we make that, like, I don't understand why we'd make that a preference. Like, that seems like to be, like.
Because the comments we got by the AG says it is against the regulations to say it shall not be in the front yard. Because you would not.
If it was a single-family home.
Yep.
And they want to put a detached garage and they comply with the 30-foot setback, would they be able to put their detached garage, another structure? And they would.
None of our other zoning, other than for swimming pools, says you cannot put a structure in the front yard.
Got it.
So then we'd basically be saying ADUs, you're different than every other structure, and that, according to the Attorney General, likely violates the regulations.
Unless we can show that it's an unfunded mandate.
Right. So, now you could waive it, but then it's still actually technically not allowed, and you're then making it discretionary on the board, which is still probably a problem. Honestly, we can't require it.
Got it.
But we can make it, we can speak loudly that it is our preference, and that you have to go through site plan review, which we're allowed to do. And I think we're basically telling people to do it. Listen, if you're not going to go with our preferences, you're going to have to come up and stand up here and explain why if you want to get a permit.
So if it wasn't the lawyer saying that we should probably put the word preference in here, if it wasn't the lawyer saying it, I'd be talking about it, but
Right.
if you think it's
Well,
doable.
The preference is doable. The preference is fine because it's not required.
Yeah,
We could also just leave it out and say nothing, but I think
No,
why not to say it's our preference?
I'm with you.
And we could go back and make it a waiver provision and.
No, I'm good.
I don't want to. Yeah, I know. Let's not.
Waive a preference?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we waive.
Let's do this. I think we're doing as much as we can. Okay. All right. So let's continue all town meeting zoning articles until the next till March 4th.
Yeah. And just a reminder to everyone, so in any public hearing, a board member is only eligible to vote if they don't miss 2 meetings. And so we have 2 members today that missed 1 meeting. We're carrying this all the way through to May, so there's a lot of meetings, so we just have to really manage attendance to make sure that
But can't we make up by watching a video?
once.
Just
Can't do
once.
that twice, you can do it
Okay.
once.
Okay.
So, we could go back to the remote option if it's still viable through the open meeting law, things like that. We may be able to accommodate people if they can't make a meeting, but
I
I'm
mean,
just.
do we need to have these on for next? Do we have to have consecutive public hearings? Can we
No,
skip
you
it?
can, you can continue it just like any other hearing.
So then instead of doing them for the 4th, let's continue these till since we don't really 18th. Yeah, let's continue. We haven't had any comment on any of them. So
Okay.
why don't we continue all of these till the 18th?
ask a procedural
Yes,
question?
please.
So, and it probably was an oversight on my part, Jean, but I couldn't find the staff report for tonight. I kept going to the link and there was nothing there. And maybe other people, it worked more successfully. But I didn't understand that we were going to be voting on the Coachman's Lane project tonight. And that I assumed we weren't voting on either of those because we hadn't heard them before. So how do I know?
Well, when you didn't get the staff report, just email me, I'll get you a staff report.
No,
So
I
I'm
should
not
have.
sure.
I kept waiting for it to populate. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Did-
I mean,
are
I was
there
able
If there's a
Fine.
draft, if there's a draft decision in
in
the
the
packet,
packet.
Oh, okay.
then we may vote on it. So that
So
would
that
be-
was in the meeting materials on the link. And my staff
Okay.
report also indicated that it's been prepared for your consideration. That's how I always put it, for your consideration, whether
So is that the case for all applications for watershed special permits that we vote on the same night we have the hearing?
Not all, I'd say probably 75%, maybe 80%.
Yeah, in-ground pools, as long as it gets through stormwater peer review, and this meeting was a week later than it normally would have been because of school vacation, and so they applied, let's see, probably 6 weeks ago, so there was plenty of time to do that and vet that internally to make sure everything was satisfied, and so, in that case, I would prepare a draft. It's just
I'd say,
more efficient.
yeah, I'd say 80% of them, 80 to 90, we.
But if it's
those
Brook
two.
School, then no.
Right, there've
Brook
been.
School's building, a new art center, then that's gonna
But
go
on,
on
but
for a
on
few
the
meetings.
pool, right, so the pools, the patios, those ones where it's an individual person, one, there's less information that we normally need. Usually as long as our peer review is back, we'll probably vote because I don't like to make them come back multiple times, and we probably don't need more information. There was one recently where we did have them.
There was a question on something.
There was a
yeah.
question on something. Maybe was it the one with the indoor pool, like the indoor swimming lane thing? I don't remember which one it was. I think it was John Sullivan, and he came back another
I
day.
forget, I think
But
it was a waiver.
every once in a while, there's one where we have them come back. But if there's a draft decision in there, then that's usually the hey, we may vote on it.
What's on Salem Street, the lot?
Oh, yeah.
That one, we didn't have a draft.
There were a butter concerns
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Right. If we've gotten a butter concerns, oftentimes we'll
I just-
continue it.
Well,
Okay,
I guess it's not just for my purposes though, but the public doesn't know that we might vote on one or not vote on one
Well,
tonight.
so
right?
there's nothing that prohibits us from voting on any of them on any time. So like you can open a public hearing and close it the same day and vote on it. So generally it could be considered that we could vote on it that day. But I'd say it's only usually the
I just clicked
limited.
on the agenda, Kate, and
Yeah.
it's been in
It's
there
coming
since,
up?
it's been there since February 20th,
I
2020.
have no idea what.
So I mean, I
This
have the agenda
folder
right
is
here in the
empty.
link.
Okay, we'll work on it. I
Okay.
should have just emailed you,
Yeah.
Jean. I kept thinking it was gonna come.
But generally, unless there's a draft decision, if there's no draft decision, we're probably not gonna vote on it because we're not gonna come up with that on the fly. So I think that's the kind of way to think that we might vote on something.
And even if I include a draft decision, it's not my decision to
Right.
vote on that.
No,
And that's
understood.
That's
why
up to the board.
the staff report always says for your consideration. It's not,
Okay.
it's not a slam dunk that it's gonna be voted on.
Yep. Okay, good question. All right, discussion item, draft open space and recreation plan. Peter, you want to just tell us what you did and what, on that?
Sure.
Thank
So, I had 4 comments that I wanted to make in the open space plan, and it came to us a couple meetings ago for our review. There's 2 premises really for all 4 of my comments. The main one is that, we are the watershed permit authority. So whenever I saw anything in the open space plan touching on the watershed, I'm saying, hey, that's planning board, how is it being done? The second premise for my 4 comments, I actually read this plan, not all 400 pages, but the actual 83-page plan. I read it a second time because I was asking myself, this is the open space plan, not these other plans, but I kept seeing other plans in the open space plan, so I started counting them. I stopped counting when I got to 27 different plans cited in the open space plan. Now, sometimes they're just listed. Some of them are described, and some of them, it shows how, in order to get this thing done, these multiple plans have to work together. So those are the two premises for my 4 comments. And my 4 comments, which I've already sent to Amy at Conservation, because she's doing this, and Jean. My 4 comments are, first, that that there had been a request for a lake technical study to follow up on the watershed plan. And the open space plan lists a number of things like that, pending studies or proposed studies. And so I thought this would not be inconsistent. Second, that there is a longstanding grandfathered exemption for the Brooks School gas engine outboards for the safety of their crew teams, but a town-sponsored work group in the 90s met with Brooks School, and the record of that group includes Brooks School stating that when the technology allows to transition to electric motors, they will do that. And so this open space plan, which explicitly says in multiple places, which I can repeat if you want to hear it, that the idea is for town departments and plans to work together to achieve certain goals, one of which is, in particular, protecting the water supply. So that long-standing pending issue should be cited so that when we're no longer here, people still know, hey, what about those gas outboard engines?
I
3,
mean, the 4 of us and Chris, because John's going to be here forever.
correct,
Okay. All right.
correct.
All right.
That's correct.
Just making sure.
That's correct, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
And the third one was proposed reporting from the watershed plan update. And then the 4th comment was, in the action item of this report, it's got a little key where they have 2-letter abbreviations for, you know, PD means planning department, PB means planning board, and DPW and health department. And so each action item will have a little string of who's responsible. I found 7 of them where either the planning board should be added or, and I hope Jean doesn't kill me, the planning board and the planning department should be added, because it struck me this is watershed related. Therefore, all these other groups are appropriate, but planning board or planning department should be added as action entities. I've spelled all this out in an email. It's already gone to Jean and Amy, but because this is the result of reviewing it at the planning board, I think we thought that I should tell you what I had found.
Great. I think those are all good suggestions, and hopefully they make it into the final draft, which we'll get to review.
Yes.
And if not, we'll bring it up again at that time.
Great,
But
thank
that's
you.
good.
So the draft's being presented to the Conservation Commission tomorrow night.
Fantastic.
If you look at the presentation, it's linked to their agenda. The last page is a slide saying, this is what we heard from the planning board. And it's got 4 bullet items. It's not, the verbiage isn't integrated in the report itself, but those are called out.
I actually haven't looked at that, but I know Amy had my 4 comments, so I assume it's fairly well represented.
Wonderful.
Double check if you'd like it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And call in.
Call Amy, yeah.
Discussion items. Awesome.
Thanks for doing that, Peter.
Yes,
That was a
thank
lot
you.
of work.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
It's, you know, it's the lake thing. I can't quite shed it.
It'll be hard
Watershed.
again.
No.
He harbors no ill will
Thank you.
towards others. Okay, MBTA multifamily housing overlay district draft planning board fees and rules and regulations. That was a mouthful.
Yes. So, as you know, the bylaw amendment passed. The bylaw references that the planning board may choose to adopt rules and regulations in order to govern the bylaw. The same thing was included in the 40R, so the Osgood overlay district. And essentially, I used that document as a baseline to recommend these rules and regulations. Essentially, it's just pulling things from the bylaw into rules and regulations, like the application, the procedures.
So this isn't zoning, these are basically the rules and regulations for if someone were to ever to propose a development
Yeah.
in the MBTA zoning district, how they go about doing it.
And
And
the important things
fees.
is I created an application form so that they would complete, and the 40R had a fee structure, and again, I mimicked the fee structure. The one thing on the project review fees that wasn't included in the 40R, and I wasn't here when those were developed, and no one's ever applied for them, so this is all new to me as well, but where it says development application, I interpreted that to mean that somebody might come in and just build an office building or
Yeah.
a industrial manufacturing business. And so, in my opinion, that would fall under the development application, so I just added commercial. And
Yeah,
then the
can I-
next
I'm-
subject
Yeah.
is
Right.
residential project application. It used to just say project application.
Wait,
So-
sorry, I'm just trying to remember back to the MBTA zoning, but did we put something in that you couldn't just do commercial? Didn't have to be, didn't?
You have to have a residential component,
Yeah.
Right,
but you
Yep.
could do an office building.
with a residential
Yep.
component. But so would there be two separate fees,
Yeah.
the residential part and the commercial part?
The way
Okay.
this is structured.
Okay.
Gene, could I make a suggestion on how to maybe, not redefine the fees, but kind of format it a different way on how you calculate it? The engineer in my head is a little freaked out about the parentheses. It looks like you're about to factor the 1250 across, but, so like, I guess it would be easier for me to understand if you struck the parentheses and you did 3,500 fee plus 1250 equals 4250, where 1250 equals 5,000 square feet times $25 per square.
Because I read this to mean that 1250 has to be multiplied by 5,000
That's exactly,
times
that's,
0.25.
I got the
Yeah.
same thing. So, and then you can do the same thing for the example below. So it'd be so you'd strike the parentheses, it'd be $9,300 fee plus $2,500 equals $12,100, where 12,500 equals 50 units times $50 per unit.
So Sean, you're fine with the 25 cents per square foot?
Yeah, no, I'm
Yes.
fine
It's
with.
25 cents per square
Yeah,
foot, right,
25
Gene?
cents, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you're fine with the fees at 3,500 plus 25 cents a square foot and 9,300 plus with the units and so forth.
Yeah, no,
It's just
I'm
the
fine.
example.
Yeah,
Just how
exactly,
it's
like
shown.
how you calculate it, right?
Okay,
Because if
so
someone.
Can you just provide an email to
Yeah,
Gene
yeah,
later
I can-
on with
I can-
just
I can send you that,
rewrite
yep.
that just
Yep.
mathematically so
Yeah.
that we're comfortable?
It's a question of mathematical grammar.
Yes,
Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
yes.
Math grammar.
So for
And syntax.
perspective,
Order
Yep.
of operations.
Yep.
site plan review is 400 plus
Did
14
you say
cents.
order of operations?
You did.
The lawyer said order of operations.
Yeah.
PEMDAS.
I know, usually I just do 1/3, that's all the math I usually have to do, 33%. Go ahead.
So site plan review for perspective is $400 plus 14 cents per square foot of gross floor area. So it's certainly more than that, but it was for the 40R too, so.
So I think the fees, I think it's all good, I think it's, I think Sean's is,
Yeah, it's just a syntax
Formatting.
thing. I just, again, you don't want to, if someone pulled a permit, it's like, how do I calculate this? Because maybe it's not as clear, right?
Yeah.
I guess to an
okay,
engineer.
so, do you need a vote on this?
We do, you want to wait till the next meeting to
No.
have Chris and John here, or no?
No, so Peter, Sean and I can vote, right?
Yep.
All right, so can we get a motion to
So
approve,
moved.
hold on, the MBTA multifamily housing overlay district draft planning board fees and rules and regulations as amended?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And you'll send
Yeah,
Gene
I'll
an
send
email
Gene
with
some language.
that. Okay, great. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 4th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody want to talk about the awesomeness of the Super Bowl?
Hold on, what were the
All right.
motions on that? Who motioned and who seconded?
I motion both.
Sean.
Yeah.
Yes,
Motion, seconded.
I will say this. I like your quarterback.
I did,
That's as far as I'm going with
Okay.
that team.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I had to get on the record how
okay,
awesome the
sorry.
Super Bowl was. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are now adjourned.